Now if you come on down to Highbury, you can see Thierry Henry. He is the best player you will ever see. Thierry Henry. Now if you come on down to Highbury.
Hello and welcome to From Dial Square to Where, the latest edition, and got a great guest on today, and one of the regulars is back as well. So first off,
you can speak good about our guest. Don't have to call me great. You can call him great as well.
Actually, I'll take it. I didn't say you were great. I said it's great to have you back. Just to clarify,
a little bit different.
Just to clarify. But yeah, I've got a guest on that I'm really excited to have on. I've been listening to his podcast religiously over the last few weeks and catching up on it. Fantastic podcast by the name of Away from Hale End, and its host is Will. And nice to meet you, Will. And thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. It's nice to meet you guys as well.
Fantastic. And great to have you back, Kunjan.
Thank you, Andrew. I just like our trophy drought, I'm back.
Well, I was going to. It's not as if there's not a lot to talk about at the moment as well, is there? I mean, we've got a hell of a lot to get through, and we'll have to try and sort of barge through the whole lot. We've got obviously the last match against Leeds. We've got a matter of a small match coming up on Thursday. We've got a manager contract extension. We've got a lot of players to talk about. Two manager contract extensions, I should hasten to add. Don't want to leave out Jonas as well. But, let's get the first thing out the way, which is the game against Leeds. We're just having a quick chat about it offline. It was so easy to start off with. It was such a lovely day in the sun, to be honest with you, for the first half an hour, near enough. They 2 goals ahead, a man down, following a horrific tackle, which Martinelli was lucky to get away with. But then it sort of slowly went downhill. Just quickly before I move on to you, I don't know whether you agree. I think that the sending off actually did them a big favour, because it gave them a chance to reset, didn't it, and become a lot more defensive. And it seemed to sort of settle the team, unbelievably, when they lost their captain on the day. What were your thoughts about that, really?
Yeah, I mean, I felt the same way. As much as I wanted the red card to be shown because that tackle was so horrendous, it kind of like Leeds play such an attacking style of football. But when you go down to 10 men, no matter who you are, you're going to have to kind of settle in and buckle down a little bit. So it kind of changed the whole. I mean, I think we would have put 3-4 past them in the first half alone had they stayed with 11 men and, kept trying to play the way Marsh likes to play. And then obviously things kind of turned on their head in the second half. Yeah,
exactly. But Kunjan, I mean, kudos to Eddie. He's having a great time at the moment. He could be our unsung hero for getting us top 4. People who've watched this podcast from the start will know that I've always liked Eddie. I've always been a fan of his. I definitely started to think that he was going to have a great career, but not with Arsenal at one point. Things may be slightly starting to turn in his favour, but he's obviously still not signed this new contract. Let's see how it goes. But at the moment, he's proving to be the difference maker for us to get top 4 or not, isn't he?
He's playing exceptionally well. And I think if someone is showing the hunger in the team right now, it's Eddie. Because everyone around him is being very consistent. I'm going to say something very controversial, which I know is not going to go well with everyone. But if I was to offer an Arsenal player a new contract, it would be Mohamed El-Neni.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that looks like it's happening, doesn't it?
I hope so. I do hope so, because he's been the unsung hero in the absence of Thomas Partey in the last 4 wins. I don't hear anyone discussing it. I don't hear anyone saying, "Oh, we missed this, we missed that." There's a certain dynamism when we have Thomas Partey that El-Neni does not bring, but he brings a sense of security that it's so unsung. We're not speaking about it, and I guess it's putting certain pegs or lining your dominoes in such a way that it eventually falls into place. Having Tomiyasu at left back, it's such an unorthodox move, but it worked genius. Having El-Neni at the base, releasing Xhaka on the left, has worked so beautifully because Xhaka has been playing exceptionally well. And Eddie, I think, has even been given more space because he's playing what Lacazette was playing. He is dropping back, but he's equally as moving forward. He's using his pace, he's using the power. And if you see the way it's a little unfortunate what happened to Leeds, how he nicked the ball off the goalkeeper, but it was quintessential a number 9 poacher's goal. And you have to
Exactly.
give it to him. That's hunger. He's showing absolute hunger, and it's beautiful to see that.
Yeah, definitely. And I've always been really wanting to see him link up with his old Hale End friends, Saka and Smith Rowe, because obviously they grew up together. And unfortunately, Smith Rowe hasn't been the one to start lately, but I'd love to see that in an elongated way of playing with them both in a number of games, just to see that relationship rebuild from years gone by, and to see him flourish with in the middle of those two. It'd be lovely to see. And I've got a sneaking suspicion that Smith Rowe, I mean, it's going to be hard to leave out Martinelli after his performance the other day. But with Smith Rowe's record against Tottenham lately, I wouldn't be surprised to see him start on Thursday. But we'll come on to that a bit further down the line. But yeah, it was very nerve-wracking in the end. It shouldn't have been nerve-wracking, but it turned out to be in the second half. Very much like hiding behind a sofa towards the last 10 minutes of the game situation. But we got there, and it like we said offline, Will, it shows a lot of character in this team that I think if you watch the game back again, it wouldn't be quite so. Obviously, it wouldn't be so nerve-wracking because you know what the score's going to be. But you will see that they didn't actually have that many chances to score.
They had none, other than that last
right
one
at the end,
very last kick in the match, basically. But I mean, they had one attempt all game. It was off a corner kick where, like, they didn't even have an attempt that led to a corner kick. It just was kind of a miscued clearance that ended up in a corner. I mean, they basically didn't do much the whole match. For the first 20 minutes of the second half, they weren't even attempting to possess the ball. They were just booting it, not even full length of the pitch. I mean, we were regaining possession basically in their final third and just passing it around. And I mean, Martinelli, as we mentioned, had 2-3 opportunities where he probably should have scored a goal. But, yeah, you're right. If you rewatch that match, we pretty much controlled it even after they scored the first goal there. So, at the end of the day, we're winning ugly matches for the first time in maybe a decade. So that's huge. I mean, Tottenham and Chelsea win ugly matches on a weekly basis. So, just because we play beautiful football doesn't mean we can't win an ugly match here and there.
Yeah, that's very true. And it just shows a lot of character from these young players that we've got throughout the team now, that they're able to see these games out. They're nowhere near as nervous as us fans watching it are. They seem to be quite calm and collected. So, yeah, we'll come on to the next game a bit later on. But what we brought you here to do and to chat about is obviously your podcast and, the content of your podcast, which is obviously the players that from Hale End that we've got out on loan across the board at the moment, here, there and everywhere. I've always been a massive, massive fan of Reiss Nelson.
Same.
He's obviously going back a few years. He was more highly thought of than Saka, Smith Rowe, anyone else that came out of Hale End with his talent. It's taking him a while, a bit longer than the others to show that talent. But I'm so delighted for him now that following a difficult period to his loan at Feyenoord, that he's really starting to show his worth over there now. He's going to play in a European final, which I'm absolutely delighted for him for. And yeah, I just want you to talk to us about how he's been getting on, really. And throughout this loan period, it was tricky to start off with, wasn't it? But he's really flourishing now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he went to Feyenoord kind of at the end of the transfer window in the summer. So I think it took him a little while to kind of get integrated into the squad. Obviously was not first choice for a while. I mean, before Christmas, he had started only one match in the league and only 3 matches total, 2 in the Conference League. So, I mean, no matter who you are, it's pretty hard to kind of get on a roll and in a flow when you're coming in playing 8 minutes there, 20 minutes there, sometimes playing out of position, sometimes playing when the team is either chasing a game and you have 6 attackers going forward or a team's just sitting back and trying to defend. So it took him a little while to get really involved. And the 2 matches he started in the Conference League, I think he had 3 goal contributions combined between the 2 of them. So he definitely showed some promise. And then an unlucky injury in December, followed up by getting COVID, kind of slowed down his winter period. But I remember it was like maybe 2 weeks into the January transfer window, and the Feyenoord manager said basically Reiss has all this ability, but I want to see him kick ass in training, and kind of kicked him in the butt, and things just turned around like that. I mean, he kind of started his first game back after having COVID, and since then it's been every match has just been his best football he's played probably since Hoffenheim, and that kind of small bit of football he was playing for Arsenal in the 1920 season when we beat Liverpool without fans, if you guys remember. But obviously that was a little bit of a different Project Restart. I don't really count. So, I mean, it's good to see him like with confidence. And you mentioned he was the biggest talent amongst him, Smith Rowe, Saka, Nketiah. I mean, any of those guys. And if you see the way Smith Rowe and Saka have matured, a lot of it has to do with their physical attributes. Saka, if you watch from when the first season Saka broke in, mostly under Emery in the 17-18 season, how small he was to how big he was by the 19-20 season, it's taken Nelson like 3 or 4 years to kind of put on that weight and size. And you don't even have to blame him for that because, you know, so everyone's body is going to mature differently. I mean, you have to remember these kids are 17. I mean, I look different than I looked when I was 17. I'm sure you do too. Like
well, no, I don't. I'm still as fit as a fiddle. I am.
It's just 2 years of a difference for Andrew. Like he was 17 2 years back. Man. Come on.
I'm still absolutely ripped, mate. No, I'm absolutely ripped. Anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the big thing that I've noticed, even from, you know, August when he went there until January, was his upper body has really gotten a lot stronger, and he's always had that pace. But at a certain point, especially in English football, you can't just get around players with pace. I mean, you see it all the time. Guys like Connor Cody. I mean, he's one of the better center backs in the league, and rarely do you see someone go around him, but he's not a man with a lot of pace. So I think that added bit of strength to his upper body has really given Reiss the confidence to take a man on and given him the confidence to use the inner parts of the pitch. He's really been seen mostly as a wide player for most of his life and most of his career. But the last 3 or 4 months, he has really developed into an inside forward, which is, you know, a lot about the modern game. As you mentioned on the last episode, not a lot of teams necessarily even play with a true striker. So that's going to be a big part in his development as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen that personally as well, that he's developed much more into that sort of same role that basically Saka's playing for us now, with a lot more intent as well within his play. He seemed to drive at the goal a lot more frequently than he ever did before. He doesn't try to do he's obviously got the pure talent to do that trickery on the wing and take players on and so on, like similar to a Pepe can. But he drives with a lot more intent into the ball now, and his balls into the box are a lot more intent to the player, rather than just swinging a ball into the box willy-nilly, like he was maybe seen to be on occasions when he was in the first team. But it's funny to remember that he played in our first game of the season, didn't he?
Yeah, I honestly forgot that myself too.
It's unbelievable to think that.
The season, and I was like, it seems like he's played a match for Arsenal this year. I completely forgot about that. I mean, that match was so long ago, and so many players played that, you know, haven't played
I know
that they thought they would, but crazy.
I know, but I mean, I know that you've mentioned previously, Kunjan, that you're a fan of him as well, aren't you, Reiss Nelson and his talent. I mean, I don't know whether you've managed to catch any of his performances at all, but he's got so much to offer still as a player, and he's still so young. It'd be great to see him have an opportunity if he was to come back into the club, wouldn't it?
Yes, but the question is right now, he has a year left on his contract, which they gave just before he went off to Feyenoord because of sell-on value. If he's to come back, we have to see how he adapts in the 22-23 season. Now, Absolutely. If he's not going to get an extension, it would become Eddie Nketiah 2.0, that if he starts hitting the ground towards the end of the season, you're like, he's off in the summer for free, someone will snap him up, and it becomes a little of a gamble, unless there's some internalization going on where Edu is like, listen, sign this new 2-year contract with a year extension. If it works out, yay. If not, buddy, we'll have to sell you on. I think when Will was mentioning the 1920 season, I think you meant the 2021 season. It's when he nicked the ball off Alisson, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the season you were referring to?
I think that was 1920. No, Project Restart. There were no fans in the stadium for that goal, I don't think. I could be wrong, but
Maybe you're right. Could be 1920. Because
Yeah,
even
I think it was.
2021, we had no fans. That's why I remember that. But you could be right.
It was one
But
of
no,
those.
you're right. It is no, you're right. It is 1920 because that's the year Liverpool won. So
Yeah.
you're right. You're right
Yeah.
about that. And yeah, he was hungry. He was pressing, and he was okay. Liverpool were at the beach for whatever said and done. They were literally on the beach.
That
You
was
know?
literally the backs to the. I loved that win. I loved the
Yeah.
win. It was
No, it was
because
good. It was good.
backs to the wall. We were just literally like holding them off. Liverpool was wave after wave after wave of attack, and somehow we managed to pull that win out of nowhere. But it was a very enjoyable game. That was. I remember.
It was, and
I'd like to be
that's
Liverpool when
something.
it matters, though. That would be nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like when
Yeah.
you look back and think, oh, we haven't beaten Liverpool in so long, and someone's like, yeah, you beat them 2 years ago. I'm like, well, I don't really necessarily count that.
Yeah. We got some silverware against them, don't forget.
Yes, we did.
We've got some silverware against
I believe
them.
Reiss Nelson scored a penalty in that Community Shield shootout, too.
And Ainsley. Ainsley scored the best one of all time.
He's the best penalty taker we may have ever had.
I think he's the best penalty taker football has ever had. To be perfectly honest, I love him. I absolutely love him taking penalties. But my question to you, though, Will, is that you have to take into account what Pepe has done this season, which is next to nothing, really, because he's not had any chance. He's not had any minutes. He's hardly coming on at all now. I was very surprised to see him come on at the weekend just gone. Pleasantly surprised in some ways, but you know, it didn't work out very well for him. But if we can get some money for him, which it looks like we're going to try and do in the summer, would it be the end of the world, really, for Reiss to actually take his place in the squad? Because when you bear in mind, as I said, the amount of minutes that Pepe is getting anyway, is it going to be that much of a risk to give Reiss one more chance within our Arsenal's first team squad when we've got so many more games next season?
For sure. I mean, it obviously depends on so many factors that, you know, we don't know the answer to. Who are we going to sign? Are we going to sign two center forwards, or are we going to sign a center forward and a versatile forward, kind of like Martinelli, who can play both wings and play through the middle? And then also it depends on what does Reiss Nelson want? I mean, is he realistically going to take the role Pepe had this season and maybe start 5 or 10 matches and sub in those other 10 matches? When he's had such a good season, he may want to build on that momentum. I do believe he could step in and do a role, no doubt. I mean, if you just look statistically at what he's done this season, it's incredibly impressive and better than really even Pepe at his best. The thing about Pepe is he's always going to try something, but it's not always going to come off. And he's not really worried about that. And with the style of football that Arteta has ingrained in Arsenal, we like to retain possession. We don't like to give it away cheaply. And I think that's a big reason why you're not seeing Pepe play a lot. I mean, even just for instance, this past weekend, he comes on against Leeds and we're up 2-1 with, I don't know, the goalie's all the way up, maybe in the 90th minute. I'm not even saying the cutback on the left foot was so bad and he should have tried and scored, but it's all about ball retention at that point. If we have the ball, they're not scoring, right? That's all that matters. 3-1, 2-1 doesn't make a difference. And that's the real issue. And the thing that Reiss Nelson, and you mentioned it earlier, that he has improved on so much this season is intent. Every touch he's taken in the last 6 months has had a purpose. And that's really been the difference. He's currently 6th per 90 minutes in successful dribbles in Eredivisie. And that's a league that has a lot of guys who try and dribble quite a bit. I mean, you think Antony, you think David Neres, guys who have been in this league and succeed for a long time. Cody Gakpo, somebody who is linked with Arsenal, one of the few players above Reiss Nelson in successful dribble percentage. And then you look at someone like Pepe, who even in his best season in League One was only successfully dribbling at a 55% rate compared to what Reiss Nelson is doing this season, which is 76%. So that's something that Arteta is going to look at and see as a positive. Somebody who can try something and is only going to try it if they have it and if it's on. And with Pepe, I mean, we all remember that Olympiacos game. The amount of dribbles he tried in that game was so frustrating, and he didn't even have that bad of a game. He actually created quite a bit. But the amount of times he was losing possession in key areas of the pitch was just incredibly frustrating. And Reiss Nelson is going to change that aspect as an outlet winger and as somebody who can come on to kind of secure a game, somebody who can keep possession. And I think that would really be the main reason why you might see Reiss kind of succeed at Arsenal next year and get his chance. But of course, as you mentioned, Kunjan, only 1 year left on his contract. We're not going to want to let him go for free. He's going to want to play regular football. So a lot's going to depend on the summer transfer window. And I mean, if for some reason we don't make Champions League, then I think you'll see Reiss Nelson definitely stay, because he can definitely make that step up to the Europa League and immediately contribute. I mean, we've already seen him contribute in that competition previously, but there's no doubt that the physical attributes he's added and the confidence he's added to his game will correlate to wherever he plays next year. And I think that'll be in the Premier League, whether it's with Arsenal or another side.
Yeah. But the good thing he's got on his side, and it's a big thing that he's got on his side, is Mikel Arteta.
Definitely.
Because he's always loved Reiss Nelson. He's always loved to give him a chance. When he was first started, he started about, I'm sure I'm right in saying, he started about the first 5 games of Mikel Arteta's reign.
Yeah.
And he was playing regularly. So that's an ally that he's got there. But the question at JD Wilson, thanks for watching, JD, he's put a question in the box saying, does he fit into the squad we have now? I can't say that there's any reason why he wouldn't. I mean, obviously the age profile that we've got, the style of play that he is, the fact that he knows an awful lot of the players there already, and he's grown up with a lot of them throughout the Hale End Academy, that are our main players now, Smith Rowe and Saka, Nketiah, depending on whether Nketiah stays. How can he not fit into the squad? Now, the question is, though, as to whether he will be able to adapt to the style of play that Mikel Arteta has firmly put into the Arsenal squad now. I mean, how do you see that, Kunjan? I mean, I think that at that age, if you've got to be adaptable, and he's shown that he's adaptable by what he's done at Feyenoord so far this season, adapting to that new team and the new manager, and he's thriving. So surely he could be able to do that for us, right?
I think Will said it so correctly, because I was going to say that if I'm Reiss Nelson, my competition is, even if Pepe goes, my competition is Martinelli, because Reiss plays on the left. Even if you push him to the right, he's a right-footed right winger. So the style we're playing of cutting in, Reiss would be more of playing with the wing backs, or the right back in this case, the full backs, where he'd be pushed towards the wing and throw one in. Now, Will said it so correctly that right now the profile of players we're targeting are people who can play on the wing or in the center. And a certain name pops up to me who plays in the middle, plays down the right, and is left-footed. We've been linked to him. There's a certain gentleman called Jonathan David. Now, if Arsenal fans were told you have Reiss Nelson or Jonathan David, putting all bias aside, we'd ask how much for Reiss Nelson.
How much for Reiss Nelson? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well.
Yeah. I mean, well, I will say Reiss Nelson did play a lot down the left wing, but since this run of form, he's been moved over to the right wing. That's where he's played at Feyenoord and found his best football. And actually, it wasn't this past week, but the week before, midway through, Sinistero was subbed off and Nelson was moved over to that left side. And I actually started to realize why he's succeeding on that right wing so much more. And what I was saying earlier about him feeling more comfortable cutting inside. When he's on that left side, since he really mainly dribbles on his right foot and he rarely does on his left, he feels that he needs to play a little bit wider to protect the ball because he's on the outside foot the way he's dribbling. But when he's on that right side, I think he sees the pitch better. I think he feels more comfortable taking a man on, especially when he's isolated in 1v1s, which he's had the pleasure of doing quite a bit, especially because Feyenoord have actually played quite a similar style of football to Arteta this season, with a center forward and dressers who will come back and help in the buildup and also kind of run into those channels, what Nketiah has done so well in the past few weeks. But yeah, I think obviously Jonathan David has that experience of playing at a higher level. I would love to see Jonathan David in the Arsenal side. And again, what would you get for Reiss Nelson? If it comes down to it and the most you're getting for Reiss Nelson this summer is £8-10 million, I'm not sure that's going to move the needle for Arsenal. But again, if you can't sign him to a contract extension, at a certain point, you probably have to let him go. I think in an ideal world, you sign him to another one of these one-year contract extensions. And if we don't make those signings of versatile forwards, you give him the chance. And if not, if he's open to it, you send him on loan to a Crystal Palace, or you send him on loan to Brighton, somewhere where both clubs he was linked to this previous summer, somewhere where he can test his football in the Premier League, get regular game time week in and week out, and it gives you another year to decide on him and see where the Arsenal squad is at that moment. I think it's unlikely that you're going to go into the season and see Reiss Nelson as a main option, because you've seen what that little bit of squad depth has done to us in the winter period when, people were out at AFCON and whatnot. And we need to have players who can come in and immediately fill a role. So as much as I love Reiss Nelson and I'm excited to see him have that confidence, I would be surprised if he's a main part of the plan next year. Although, as you said, Andrew, Arteta is a big fan of the player and he's given him a chance every time he's been around.
Exactly. And we'll move on to actually, I'm just going to go on a couple of these other comments while they've been good enough to put in there. Gary, thank you for watching, Gary, again. Ainsley McDonald and Nketiah have had their chances to be part of an Arsenal squad. Maitland-Niles deciding right back isn't for him, and Eddie's not signing, but I understand he wants guaranteed playing time. Arsenal can't offer that to him. We'll have to wait and see on that one. It might change. This run he's having in the team now may change things. And he's also put, competition is good. Nelson shouldn't look at Martinelli as an issue, but more of a challenge. Playing time at Arsenal isn't guaranteed to anyone. That's a big thing for me. And I said it on a show last night I was on with Ryan, that Pep, when he first initially meets a player before deciding to sign a player at Manchester City, he tells them, you have to be happy with playing a rotational role within this team. You have to do what I ask you to do. You have to be all the non-negotiables that Pep's got with the pressing and obviously the very strict positioning that he puts into his players, and he wants the players to mix it up. He has to play in different positions. But the main thing is as well that you have to be accepting of a role that you're never guaranteed to start every single game. You're always going to be part of a rotational squad. And I'm almost certain that is exactly what Arteta wants for this Arsenal team moving forward. So I think that we do need a very good player in each two very good players in each position in the on the pitch, and time will tell whether Nelson could be one of those. But I would just be so reluctant to get rid of him this summer if it was me, based on the back of a very good loan that he's having right at the moment, without giving him a good one more chance within the Arsenal squad. It'll just pain me a little bit, because he's always been a good favourite of mine for many years, sort of coming through the Hale End Academy. So we'll have to wait and see. But moving on to the next player we can talk about. Now, I think it's unprecedented for any major club across Europe to have got rid of, or will be getting rid of, their three main strikers in one season. Because obviously we've already got rid of Aubameyang. Lacazette and Nketiah are almost certainly look like they're going to be going. So we're going to be left with no one. But one player we've got out on loan at the moment, doing very well as well, Flo Balogun. Now, what can you tell us about how well Flo's been getting on up at Middlesbrough, Will?
For sure. I mean, I think the first thing to realize is the system that he's playing in. I mean, you guys remember Chris Wilder at Sheffield United. You remember the droughts that those strikers were going on every season. I mean, they never really prioritized it until they brought in Ryan Brewster. That didn't go very well. The way he plays with those overlapping center backs, the striker's main goal is not to score goals, as crazy as that sounds. He plays a two-striker system, but really the attacking outlets are your wing backs and your outside center backs, who kind of link up for combination play through the center. And Balogun has done excellently at that. He has been exactly what you want to see in a number 9 who's coming back to the ball, helping him build up. He has gotten incredibly strong with his back to goal, which was not really his strong suit. I mean, anyone who's watched him at the U23s level knows he likes to kind of drift out to the wing the way Aubameyang did, receive the ball and dribble out players. And he is still great at that. I mean, if anyone was watching the last international break when he was playing with the U21s, he scored every type of striker goal you could imagine. He scored a curler, he scored 2 running off the back shoulder. He had an excellent assist where he megged a player out on the wing and drove into the box. He has all of that to him. Now, the last thing he needs to add to his game is that little bit of physicality that you need to play at the top English level. And he needs to add consistent goal scoring. And unfortunately, this loan didn't provide that, although it did provide adding that physical level to his game. He did score 3 goals. He had 3 assists. And he played quite well. Towards the end of the loan period, I'm not sure exactly what happened. Chris Wilder kind of stopped trusting him. And Borough went from fighting for that last spot in the promotion playoff race to not making it. So I was a little surprised to see that. I do think Balogun will need another loan. I mean, you saw it with Broha this year. Chelsea made the right move to send him on loan to Southampton. That is probably what Balogun needs next season, is a loan to a lower Premier League club. I was kind of hoping Borough would go up so that they would be interested in bringing him back in. Consistency is such a key for young players and really learning a system. It's hard to learn a new system every year. But, I mean, I'd love to see him another place, Brighton. Brighton would be another place that would be great for an Arsenal player. Graham Potter has a different style of football. It's incredibly expansive, and they're always in need of goals. I mean, their expected goals versus how many goals they score is always so wildly apart because Neil Maupay is just, I mean, not a good finisher. And obviously they brought in Danny Welbeck. He hasn't done the job. So I think realistically, Balogun will need another loan. He's not ready to immediately contribute to a team that hopefully is making Champions League and then will be fighting to stay in that Champions League spot. I mean, that's not going to be any guarantee next season if we make Champions League to make it again. So again, Arsenal are likely to bring in 2 forwards, and a player of Balogun's age, he needs experience more than anything. He's only 20 years old. He needs to go out on loan for another season and come back as a groomed 21-year-old who can fight, amongst those top positions. And similar to Jesus, or Profile, who we're looking at, he can play as a central striker, and he's happy to play out on the wing. Martinelli came into Arsenal as a striker and now is mostly a left winger. So I think Balogun is another player who's happy to do that. And the best move for him will be another loan. He's played quite excellently here, but I don't think it's been quite enough experience where he's ready to step in and immediately make an impact.
Yeah. It's like Gary said there. So he asked you a question. So, Will, does Balogun need more loan time because we need a 10-plus goal striker at this level, and it seems he hasn't got that experience, right? Well, I think you've answered that pretty well. I mean, the issue that it would have been nice if he could have taken Nketiah's position this season, because we're losing 3 strikers. The maximum we're going to get in is 2. Right. Even that's a long shot, really, to get 2 really high quality strikers in one window. So, do you not think he could take that Nketiah position? Or do you think it's not going to benefit him? And in the long run, it's much better for him to have another season, full season of full, first team football.
That's the issue, is really that the benefit to him would be to get a full season of first team football, playing week in and week out. He needs that consistency. I mean, that's really the best way to grow. Look at Reiss Nelson. He had previous loans. He had a loan at Hoffenheim where he was excellent, and then injuries derailed the second half of that season, and then it took him another 2 years to kind of get back to that level. Consistency is really the only way for a player to grow and continue to succeed. And I just worry if Balogun is our third striking option that, yeah, he may get a run in here and there. He may get to play some European group stage games if they're not important, but is he going to get to play once a month or less, or is he only coming in to close out a game 8-12 minutes? Then you're like, are we wasting a season of a 20-year-old who's already, ruffled some feathers? If you remember, his last contract was coming to an end and he was worried about playtime. So he's a name who's sought after across Europe, not just in England, and he's a player who's going to want to play. I think for his progression, the best case scenario is another loan, but obviously, we're going to need a third striking option. I mean, Martinelli can fill in there, but we're not going to bring in more than 2 forwards. So it does pose a bit of a situation for Arteta and Edu to figure out. Yeah.
Because, Kunjan, we've seen what the benefit of Tammy Abraham, the loans that he had in his younger playing career, and what he's doing now, obviously scoring tons of goals over in Italy. It really will benefit him long term, don't you think, that Balogun, if he can get, because I think we made that mistake with Nketiah. I think Nketiah will be another year advanced now if he had gone out on loan a bit earlier. So I think in the long run, Balogun is definitely going to benefit by going out on loan again next season, don't you think?
Depends again. Like we're discussing about how crazy it is that we're going to lose 3 strikers by the start of the window. And if Balogun becomes our third choice and we do get 2 coming in, we can expect, especially with our injury record, Balogun to get a lot of time. If hypothetically Balogun doesn't get the ground running in the next season, that's where the catch-22 happens. Because if I'm not mistaken, he signed a 3-year extension. Going into the next season, he'll have 2 years left on his contract. So it become, again, a very difficult managerial position to be in, because do you want Eddie Nketiah 2.0 in this situation as well? I mean, there are certain hopes, because Balogun, just like Eddie, wanted certain guarantees for him to sign that contract. And I assume that start of the season, he was promised, you know what, you'll get your run in the League Cup, which he did. You'd get a run with a few games in the Premier League, which he did. If I'm not mistaken, he even started our first 2 games up front. If I'm not mistaken, against Brighton, he was. Yeah,
he played with Reiss Nelson, one of them.
So he did get a run in. It's not that Mikel did not trust him, but we saw there was a certain struggle, there was a certain lack of fluidity, because we've seen him perform, we've seen him play. I think Will said it so correctly in the under 23s. He's absolutely phenomenal. And I do believe that if Balogun does get one more year, we do find ourselves in a catch-22 again, where he comes back from the second loan spell, where he's got a perfect 1 year under his wing, maybe in the Premier League with a lesser side, maybe a Fulham, because if Mitrovic does stay at Fulham, they may need a backup. And if Mitrovic is off, they will definitely need a striker. So maybe one of the lower league sides, maybe if Leeds stay up, a Patrick Bamford replacement. And we've had a good record with Leeds and sending Nketiah there. So Balogun would be a good option, especially with the style of play. I do feel if he gets the ground running, he comes back with 1 year left, we'll be sitting up in our arms going, how could we make ourselves, put ourselves in this position? So it's, if you ask me, I would love to have him as our third striker going into next season, integrate with the new strikers, integrate with the team, start having your opportunities and see how the ground gets running.
Yeah, I think so. And Gary's made another good point. But Exhibit A, Saliba with 1.5 years of loans, looks like he's ready for time in the Premier League now for next season, which is very, very true. So we'll have to see how he gets on. We had another question, which we'll go on to, Will, quickly. It's something that was we didn't sort of speak about beforehand, because we'll go on to our bright young talent at right back shortly. But JD Wilson has put a question in saying, it seems like we've got an abundance of wingers and some nice strikers. What about centre midfielders or wing backs? So we're going to we'll go on to the wing backs shortly. But midfielders, that's one place where we seem to be fairly light at the moment coming through the academy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, it depends how you look at it. There are some really top prospects like Patino and
Aziz. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And the thing is, I mean, central midfield, it's such an interesting one when it comes to progression, right? Like if you look at someone like Matt Smith, if you remember, he was on that FA Cup side. Everyone was like, okay, he's going to be the next guy. And he really struggled at the League One level this year because that position so much has to do with the system you're in and the quality around you. And
do you think that was the choice of team he went to?
For Matt Smith?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think Doncaster was his top choice. Obviously, they had a horrific season, a manager who got, sacked in November, and they brought in another one. The manager who was in there before was the manager who had coached Smith Rowe at Huddersfield. So I think that's probably why Arsenal had chosen Doncaster. It didn't quite go to plan, but again, if you listen to Away from Hale End, Matt Smith got 49 appearances this year. That's really all you can ask for on loan. And, he just hasn't progressed athletically the way you need to progress to make it at the top level. And that's why midfielders, I think, are especially hard to gauge because you don't get quite as much space to operate in. And so it's really hard to make that next step up. So as we were saying, Patino and Aziz are the two main guys. Aziz went out on loan to start this year to Portsmouth and really wasn't played in the right positions. They played him as a 10 a little bit too much, and he's a lot more comfortable. It's kind of that hybrid 6-8, the way Xhaka plays in a double pivot. And he can play a little further up. He can be an 8, but he didn't really get the opportunity there. He picked up an injury in the midst of it all and was recalled. And it actually took him a month or so at the U23 level to kind of get back up to game speed. He looked a little bit sluggish to start, but then he picked it up and had a really nice end to the season.
I really like him. Yeah, I really like the look of Aziz.
He's great. I mean, he's also a player who has an unbelievable shot on him and can score from outside the box, which is something that Arsenal could use right now in their midfield. As we've all seen Thomas Partey hit one up to Rosette a few times this season.
Exactly, yeah.
But a player who I actually think is really interesting midfield prospect is Salah Adin. He is the exact kind of player who Arteta would love to play in that left center midfield role as a number 8. He kind of grew up playing a little bit more on the wing, converted to a little more of a free-flowing 10, and this season has really found his position as a number 8. And I do think him, Aziz, and Patino, at least 2 of them likely to go on loan next year, and that'll be huge for their progression, because if they can get to play in a system that allows them to play in that free-roaming space and they get used to senior football, they'll come back ready to contribute pretty immediately in the 2023-24 season. Yeah.
Patino's going to be the interesting one because he's got all the talent in the world, but he just still's got the body of a young boy, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's tiny.
I know, and he worries me. If the wind gets up, he's going to get blown away. During a game, I think he needs to bulk up a bit. But
his technical skill is amazing, though.
It's really unrivaled. Yeah, brilliant.
So I think personally, the physicality isn't as important necessarily if you have the ability he does to escape his men and identify space. Like, he is the kind of player, when he receives a pass, he knows where every defender is around him and where he wants to make that next move. And so often he doesn't actually have to go shoulder to shoulder with other midfielders because he knows how to evade without making contact and then, progress to play forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we go on to the other topic I want to discuss, the right back. Just to link into that, I'm going to come to you quickly, Kunjan, because it's really interesting to me in the last game against Leeds that he did choose that option of putting Tomiyasu at left back and Cedric at right back. And you know what I'm like? I always like to have everything in its place as far as you possibly can, so you minimise the risk in 2 areas. So if it was me, and it worked out brilliantly, like you said, so I'm not arguing at the end the result because it worked. It was a bit of genius that he did. It completely shut down Rafinha. But if it would have been me, I would have put Tomiyasu in his rightful right back place and keep everyone in their normal slots, and they'll either use Tavares or Cedric at left back. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the North London derby, because I'm going to touch on that a little bit in the lead up to this, what would you do then for this upcoming game? Because mostly Son used to play coming in from the left, but I watched the game against Liverpool. He was very, very central, Son, and I think it's going to be hard for Tomiyasu just to do like a man marking job on him, which I think would have been ideal, but I don't think that's going to work. So it's probably going to be more of a zonal type of situation we've got, which worries me a little bit. But would you revert Tomiyasu back to right back for this game? And if so, how would you sort of like to see the defence set up?
The first question is, before even Tomiyasu, who are you putting in the centre? Because Rob Holding has been playing so well that even if Ben White is fit, the price tag puts Ben White over Rob Holding. The price tag. But not the performance, you see?
Yeah, but you see, if it was me, I'd play all 3. I'd play here, I would have a back 3 and wing back.
I said that. I said we should take a blueprint from Chelsea, because the way we set up against Chelsea was so brilliant that we were able to counter each and every tactic at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
Why can't we do the same thing at the Toilet Bowl Stadium? I think if we have a solid... Sorry, Will?
I think we will. I think we'll do exactly what we did at Chelsea.
Yeah.
So if we do have the back 3 of Holding, Ben White, Gabriel, which is fantastic, I think then it gives us more option to have Tomiyasu on either side, because he would drop back to form a solid 4. It won't be your back 4. It'll be a solid 4. I think Ben White may just open up the space to play in the base with El Neni, because again, even if we do put El Neni there, where does Xhaka play? Because if we have Xhaka and El Neni sitting side by side with each other, Tomiyasu and Cedric on the side, who are your front 3? Someone has to drop out, because Odegaard would be able to find a link, but a front 2 would leave it a little narrow. So we'll have to figure out the structure. But I do feel that if we go with the same shape, formation, and tactics as Chelsea, I think Will, who's been saying if Champions League happens, would have to come on and say, I've had a good slice of humble pie, and it's not if, it is happening.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Now, moving on to that right back situation. Now, obviously, at the moment, it's great to have Tomiyasu back. Will, it's just phenomenal. I love watching him play.
He's fabulous.
I've mentioned it a few times. You may have seen some of the previous shows if you've been watching them back. I likened him to a sort of a Lee Dixon type of right back. No nonsense.
No nonsense, man.
Defend first. You will not get that ball into the box as long as I'm here. He just cuts people down. So I love him. At the moment, as it stands, we've got obviously Maitland-Niles on loan. God knows what's going to happen to him. I doubt very much we'll see him at Arsenal ever again.
For Arsenal again, I don't think.
He could have been one of our best right backs if he'd have said, "Yes, I will learn this. I will learn this role." He would have probably
played 20 matches this year. He would have started 20 matches this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, the crazy thing is he went to go play for Mourinho, and he hasn't played 1 minute in central midfield. He has not played a second in central midfield. He's barely played at all.
No.
So did Mourinho lie to him and say, yeah, we're going to utilize you as a central midfielder? Or he was like, I'll play wing back for Mourinho, but not for Arteta. I mean, bizarre situation.
It's very, very strange.
But Mourinho's tactics are so defensive that even if you're right back, you're still in midfield. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But he's not even getting any minutes, is he? I mean, he was playing in the Europa Conference League at best, mainly.
Yeah, he had his first start in Serie A since February last weekend, so that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, if he had the attitude of an El Nini, he would be a world beater.
Or even the attitude of Saka. I mean, think about how Saka broke into the team. Any position he was called upon, he went in there and he put a shift in. I mean, even when he was asked to play in that left central midfield role for a few matches, it wasn't the best he played, but he put a shift in every single time, fought for every 50-50 ball, was rigid to the position Arteta asked him to play in. I mean, Maitland-Niles just doesn't have that attitude. It's his way or the highway, and obviously we know with Arteta that is not going to fly.
No, he's going to waste his career, unfortunately. But he was the previous option at right back. He's gone. Cedric he's got no real long-term future at the club, although he's filled in admirably quite a while. But it leads me on to Brooke Norton Cuffy, and I get really excited about him. I think he's got a massive future ahead of him. He's had a great loan season, which you can come on to in a moment. He gives me Reiss James vibes a little bit, personally. I don't know what you think with regards to the style of play. But yeah, I'll leave it to you to sort of bring us up to date on how he's been getting on, because people who are on Twitter have been getting a lot of good praise from people that have been watching him, singing his praises. So yeah, bring us up to date. For
sure. I mean, before the season started, I did a little bit of just kind of recapping who's in the academy and who to watch this year. And I watched him play a little bit the season before, because that was really when he broke into the U23s. A few injuries in the 2021 season in the academy allowed a 16-year-old Brooke Norton Cuffy to finish the season starting at right back for the last 6 games in 2021. And I have never seen somebody of that age with these physical attributes. It's absolutely stunning. I mean, he's the fastest player on the pitch and potentially the strongest player on the pitch every time I've watched him play. And he's incredibly intelligent, right? Like, you think about Reiss Nelson when he was, younger. He was definitely faster and more technically skilled than most players on the pitch, but his kind of football IQ and what he identified as possible wasn't always right. And Brooke Norton Cuffy really rarely puts a foot wrong. And he did the same thing in the 6 months at Lincoln. He started 16 matches, 20 total matches he played for them. And although he only had 1 assist and 1 goal, which are not bad numbers for a mid-table side in League One, he was just literally their entire offensive tactical game plan. They basically ran the entire quote-unquote offense through him. They would try and break the press by going to his side of the pitch. He has an unbelievable ability to pass with both feet, which for a young defender is really, really hard to come by. Obviously, with Tomiyasu we saw this week, his left foot just as strong as his right, but having that ability in your back four makes breaking a press so much easier, because obviously teams are going to try and force you wide, try to force the center back to pass to the right back, and try to force the right back to have no options other than to boot it up pitch. But if you can play that left-footed pass into a midfielder coming back towards you and you're confident in it, that gives you such an ability to break the press. And then on top of that, he's faster than every single player on the pitch. So when he makes that first pass into midfield, he gets around his, marker in the press and, go from there. And not only is it all that, but his crossing ability, I mean, he has everything. He really is the complete package. And as you said, like Reiss James is so good at hitting the ball hard and accurately. It's a little bit different than the kind of delivery that Alexander-Arnold has, which is just pretty much always spot on. But Reiss James can hit a ball real hard, and he can hit it accurately, and he can hit it on every different flight level. And he has that exact same ability. And, he easily could have had 5-6 assists with better quality in front of him. He was averaging nearly a key pass per game from the right back position, which is fairly rare to see. So I'm real excited about him. I hope he can step in next year and be kind of that coverage. And as everyone has seen, we're linked with Hickey from Bologna, who can cover on both sides, which to me shows that Arteta does think Brooke Norton Cuffy might be that extra option in the senior team next year. I don't think if he was just targeting one side, and if he was just targeting maybe Jed Spence, someone everyone thought, then I would say, Brooke Norton Cuffy's probably not in the plans. But I think he's probably had enough of Nuno Tavares's kind of unreliability and doesn't want to be in that position where he has to play him. I don't think he's giving up on him, but I don't think he wants to be in that position where he has to play him. And so I think Brooke's going to stay with the first team next year and get his option as a rotation player.
Well, this is it. I would rather I definitely want to keep Nuno Tavares, but I would rather send him on loan again next season than Brooke Norton Cuffy. I'd rather have Brooke Norton Cuffy involved with the first team squad. Do you think he's good enough to be like first choice, not first choice to play every week? I mean, first backup for a Tomiyasu? Because I do.
I think like as you said, Cedric has filled in admirably. He's really done his best. He's improved a lot from the previous season where he was pretty unwatchable. But the thing about Cedric is he's very wasteful with the ball. He's incredibly wasteful with the ball. He's not good at playing out of the press. He doesn't have a great delivery. For some reason, he's been on so many set pieces. I don't know if he's doing something in training that we're not seeing in matches, but I mean, if I see him over another free kick, I'm going to lose my mind. I mean, I don't remember which match it was. Maybe it was Brighton or Southampton, where he had 3 or 4 set pieces that he hit like directly out of play. Like we didn't even get anything from them. But Brooke Norton Cuffy, he's incredibly intelligent. His biggest issue is going to be defensive liability. He's a little bit of a defensive liability. And, with Saliba and White, or Saliba and Gabriel, or White and Gabriel, I think Norton Cuffy can be kind of covered in the back. But, I think if you bring in Hickey and Brooke Norton Cuffy can be that option on the right side, and Hickey's, kind of Tierney's backup. And if Tomiyasu has to fill in at center back, you can rely on Brooke Norton Cuffy. Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, that'd be really, really encouraging, I think. Because, I mean, let's face it, when Reiss James got into the Chelsea team, he got in because of, I can't remember exactly what it was now, some injury. He wasn't brought in gradually, was he? He was thrust into the first team, and it was either a sink or swim situation for him. And of course, we've seen where he's an regular England international now. He never looked back. So the same thing may happen, with a Brooke Norton Cuffy. So it'd be very, very exciting to see his development moving forward. Because, I mean, we don't have to get rid of Cedric. I mean, we could just let his contract run out. He's
not on big wages or anything. And he seems happy to just, I mean, we know he loves a celebration. So he seems happy to be, just a part of the squad and fill in when called upon. I mean, I don't know how he got that Portugal call up just at the last international break. I think those days are probably behind him. But he's the kind of player who can be a mentor to a young player like Brooke Norton Cuffy. Obviously, Tomiyasu as well, although I'm not sure if he really will have that ability with a bit of a language barrier. But yeah, I think Brooke Norton Cuffy could definitely step in. And I just want to throw one more thing at you about Brooke Norton Cuffy. He was second in League One in successful dribbles per game, which is pretty insane from that position to be that high up on the list. And considering he was only there for 6 months. So just I mean, that's really a unique talent. That's really what he is. He's an incredibly unique talent, the same way Reiss James and Alexander-Arnold are. And, maybe a decade ago, he wouldn't be considered a right back. But, in modern football, the wing backs are so crucial to progression and to the final third actions that I think Brooke Norton Cuffy will have a real chance to break into this Arsenal team sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And he's equally adept at playing in a back four as to a back five, in your opinion?
Certainly. I mean, he really, at the U23 level, he was mostly playing in a back five, and that's how I saw his kind of offensive abilities to be so unbelievable. But, this year he stepped in a back four for a few matches at the U23 level, and Lincoln City, that's really how they mostly played. And his defensive intelligence grew so much. The same way he identifies space on the offensive side of things, he has learned to do that on the defensive side of things. And instead of just kind of attacking everything in front of him, he's kind of learned how to leave the game in front of him. And when he sees the opportunity to go in and make a tackle, he does. And when he doesn't, he stays in front of the play. And that's kind of the opposite of how Nuno Tavares is, right? Like Nuno Tavares kind of runs around like he's headless and just attacks the ball. I mean, how many times have you seen, Nuno Tavares be the furthest man forward in the press, and you're just like, what is going to go on? What's going to go wrong here? That isn't Norton Cuffy, and it never will be. He's an incredibly intelligent player and has shown that he's, ready to learn and ready to adapt to the system in front of him.
Yeah, I think so as well. Just a quick extra roundup. Is anyone else, do you think, that we'd just like to quickly bring to anyone's attention that you've been talking about on your podcast before we move on to the North London Derby?
Yeah, Nikolai Moeller. I know he didn't have a great year on loan at either club he went to. The first loan move was a little bit of an odd one. He went to the third division in Germany. I'm pretty convinced it had to do with just being kind of closer to home and to the culture he's more accustomed to. He's Swedish. But then the second loan to Den Bosch from the second division in the Netherlands, he played well. He got his opportunities to play. He started 10 or 11 matches. And he's just such another player similar to Brooke Norton Cuffy, where his physical attributes interest me much more than what he's actually done on the pitch so far. He is incredibly tall and incredibly good at retaining possession. He wins a ton of balls in the air and really has helped every side he's been on as being an outlet. The main thing for him will be next year, hopefully go into an English side, probably top tier League One or lower end championship side, and scoring goals. That's really what's held him back so far. I don't think it would make any sense for him to play at the U23 level anymore. He's shown that because of his physical attributes, that's not much of a challenge for him anymore, similarly to Brooke. So he's one to watch next year for certain. And then obviously a player who's not on loan, but one that is gained a lot of hype this year is Marcelo Flores.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about him. I don't think he's going to be earmarked for loan, is he? I think he's going to be earmarked straight for the first team. Fast track.
I think you'll see him play some first-team football next year for sure. I mean, even his jump from the U18 to U23 this year, it reminds me of the exact same that happened with Saka. I mean, kind of out of nowhere, Saka wasn't considered one of the top prospects. We've talked about it. Nketiah, Smith Rowe, and Nelson were really the big three. But Saka made such a big leap from the U18 to the U23 level, and that's a bigger jump than you think. And this year he's got 11 goals and 3 assists in 19 starts. And he really, really reminds me of Alexis Sanchez. He's got a very low center of gravity. He's kind of quick to change direction. He can use both feet pretty excellently. And he's shown that he can really finish from all sorts of angles.
Do you think that he could be the Nketiah replacement as the third choice striker?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't really played as the furthest man forward at this point in his career, although he can be that runner in the channels the way Nketiah has been the last few matches. I think if you're to bring in like a Jesus who can fill in as a striker, and you bring in, hopefully an Osimhen type player, Marcelo Flores can be that extra, winger type player, especially if Reiss Nelson has moved on and Nicolas Pepe has moved on. I do think Marcelo Flores will not be loaned out, though. I do think he'll get a chance to play in the first team next year, especially since we'll have some sort of European competition.
Yeah, you don't often get two countries having a massive tug of war over a player like they have over him at such an early age, and giving him his first starts for a country like Mexico as well. It's no like small country, is it? No. Football wise, to give him their first start just to try and ward off Canada, it tells you a lot about the guy's technical ability, because he's very, very exciting for whatever I've seen from him.
He really is.
Yeah, so that's going to be great to see him grow. Do you know what these guys, regards to Nikolai Moller and him? Do you know anything about the length of the contracts that they've got left? Because I'm not sure. Cause it's not very long, is it? I seem to remember.
Moeller has, I believe, 2 years left on his contract, but you see that a lot with youth players. They sign their, first professional contracts, usually 3 years, and then they go out on loan. And as long as the club, says we're going to send you on loan another year and have plans for you X year, usually they'll sign 1 year extensions or whatever it might be. I mean, it's just more talked about nowadays because, especially with Arsenal, we've seen so many players leave on free. But it's not a situation where you usually have to worry unless it really runs down to that last year. But even with Balogun, that ran down to his last year of his contract, and he signed an extension. When the club, puts that much into you as your development and trusts in you, usually the players are willing to repay that and trust the club back. So I don't worry too much about these contract situations. Yes, you're going to lose players, but I mean, you remember Xavier Amechi? Everyone was so worried when he went to Hamburg, and he's barely played for them. So
yeah,
players see things like that happen, are like, we don't want that to be us. And especially, you succeed at a youth level in Arsenal, that probably does better for your career than leaving for, a foreign team and sitting on their bench. So I'm not worried at the moment about his contract nor Marcelo Flores. I think especially Flores, that'll be dealt with in the summer. So if that doesn't happen in the summer, then it's time to worry.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Right, it's time to move on to the dreaded North London derby, Kunjan. I mean, I hate them anyway. I always have. I can't enjoy them until their final whistle when we've won. At least, or if we've got a 3-goal lead during the game, that could start to settle down a little bit. But this one is probably one of the biggest for a long, long time, isn't it? I mean, you've got the chance of getting a St Totteringham's Day for the first time in several years at their place. It's massive, and I just can't even bear thinking about it at the moment. I mean, how do you see it going?
2 results. The obvious is
No, there can only be one result, unfortunately.
Well, no, I'm saying there could be 2 results. I don't see a third result. I see either a draw or genuinely an Arsenal win. I think we have a positive bounce about what we're going into, and I think the pressure is so much more on Tottenham to deliver, because with a 4-point gap, even if they win, it's an if button maybe. With 2 games to go, we have to lose at least one, and they have to win both their games. So it becomes a case of let's beat Arsenal and hope for the best, which has been the kind of pattern for top 4 right now. One thing is, I remember discussing this with you months back. Let's not write off the 3rd position.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's difficult. It's really difficult, but let's not write it off. But yes, I think if we set up the way we did against Chelsea, if we play with our strength, if we let Tottenham take a little bit of the possession, but take the ball back and play with the spaces exactly the way we punished Chelsea, I do see a very smooth victory. I do not see the victories that we've had with the likes of Leeds or West Ham, where up to the last second you're like, what's happening? I do believe there will be a certain fluidity if we go to Tottenham with the same structure as Chelsea. A draw could be the more likely situation, because I think both teams will be a little nervy, and we could switch off sometimes. They could switch off on the other side. But I do not see a Tottenham victory. I have a very strong feeling. I do not see Tottenham taking 3 points in this.
Do you mind ringing me every few hours between now and the end of the game just to give me a pep talk? That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Will, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kunjan said it best. If we set up the way we did for Chelsea, unless we're incredibly unlucky, which can happen in football, we've seen it go both ways, I don't see a way we lose if we set up in a back 5. If we set up in a back 4, we could kill them and they could kill us. The thing is with Conte's plan is when you set up in a back four, he isolates your wing backs in 2v1s. They set up with those two wide wing backs. It'll probably be Sessegnon and Emerson, and then obviously Kulusevski, Kane, and Son. That puts them in a 5-on-4 against our defense. That's why I don't think we're going to set up in a 4 at the back. I think you actually made an interesting point, which I hadn't thought about, is if you set up with Tomiyasu, White, Holding, Gabriel, you can attack with a 4 at the back and defend with a 5 at the back. And maybe you will see Nuno Tavares on that left side and Tomiyasu on the right side. I mean, I think we probably won't just because of the risk that comes with Nuno Tavares, but there's something to that risk that, as we saw with Manchester United, when he ventures forward, it offers something. He scored a goal. I mean, let's just be honest. If that's Tomiyasu at left back, we're not scoring that opening goal against Manchester United. I love Tomiyasu, but he's not gambling, kind of silly gambling to the back post like that. So there is something to Nuno Tavares, especially if we're really able to play Tomiyasu, White, Holding, and Gabriel. Those are obviously our 4 best defenders who are fit. I think you might see Nuno Tavares. And then, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, Andrew, I do think Smith Rowe probably comes into the team for Martinelli. I think he provides a little bit more defensive cover. Martinelli's a better presser, but Smith Rowe is a better retainer of possession, and he's better at actually winning a challenge. So I think you might see Smith Rowe come back into the team as well. But obviously, it's so hard to predict these lineups these days. Who knows if Ben White is fit? I don't know if anyone else got as big of a laugh as I did seeing him and his girlfriend in the box against Leeds with her arms around him.
Oh yeah. Well, which one was his girlfriend? There was two. There's two stunning potential girlfriends there, wasn't there? Really. But yeah, it was funny. If we played back 5, I would definitely play Nuno Tavares. It sounds mad, but I think he could cause them trouble.
I agree.
Behind, because their right back, Emerson, is just one of the worst right backs in the league, in my opinion.
He played well against Liverpool, which was shocking. That was the only good match he's played all season.
Yeah. Honestly, I think he's dreadful. He's right up there with
with Nuno Tavares.
Yeah,
no,
like Nuno Tavares. We're like,
he's right up there with Nuno Tavares.
No, there's one that's even worse. The Leeds left back. His name's escaping.
Junior Firpo. He's terrible.
Yes. Oh my God, he's absolute garbage. That guy. But he's dreadful. I mean, he makes Nuno Tavares look like anyone.
I remember when Leeds signed him, everyone was like, he's going to be so good under Bielsa. He's so good in that system. Like, I mean, it says whom? Barcelona signed him. He basically never played for them, and then been trashed for Leeds.
Yeah, he's been absolutely awful. But I honestly think that Nuno Tavares could cause big problems for Emerson Royal if we played a back 5.
And it'll probably cause Kulusevski to have to track back a little more often. But I mean, we saw with Tomiyasu this weekend. I mean, Tomiyasu at left back, he was attacking so much that it allowed Martinelli to be free and over the top and have a lot of 1v1 situations with Rafinha. So I think whatever happens on that left side, you're going to see similar things that are trying to get our left winger, whether it's Martinelli or Smith Rowe, in some 1v1s, because that's how we were really most dangerous against Leeds.
Yeah, I think so as well. But I am really, really nervous. I've not been making it up over the last few shows that I've been doing. I've been absolutely nervous as hell, but because it means so much to get for this young side. I love this team, and I desperately want them to succeed. I really want them to get top 4, and it means so much to me, which is why I'm so nervous about it all. But I'm actually fairly confident of. What you said, Kunja, not losing this game. But I honestly think we could got a chance of like nicking a win, a 1-0 win. 1-0 to the Arsenal would do me right down to the ground. But we can't play.
My heart is racing. Just hearing you talk about it, my heart is like racing a billion.
I know. Tell me about it. It's awful. But we can't. What we cannot do is play into their hands because they are one of the best counter-attacking teams around. We've made those mistakes against them so often in the last 2 or 3 seasons. We can't do it again. Surely you've got to learn from those the mistakes that we've made previously and not do that. I mean, can you remember the game, obviously earlier in this season, the wonderful game we played against them? Obviously it was at home, but it's 1-3-1.
And it was Nuno was their manager.
It was Nuno, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, how did we sort of mainly set up then. We played a 4-3-3 on that day, didn't we?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we played
4-2-3-1. We were 4-2-3-1. Aubameyang was the central striker at that time.
I think we
Yes,
played
yeah.
we played a 4-1-4-1 with Partey as a lone 6, and then Xhaka and Odegaard in the middle with Smith Rowe and Saka at the wings.
On the sides, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
one of the it's that same formation we've tried with Smith Rowe coming in as a number 8 and Martinelli on the wing, which has never worked. But
Yeah.
I think Smith Rowe's still learning that position. I mean, as you mentioned on the podcast earlier, he hasn't been able to train really for the last 6 months fully. So he hasn't been able to, train as they were thinking about playing him as a false 9. He hasn't been able to train as kind of a number 8. It'll be interesting to see if he makes that transformation, because I think long term, I think Arteta would like him to play in that Xhaka role with Martinelli on the left wing. So
Yeah, I think so. Him and Saka are going to be the base of, and Odegaard. I'll throw Odegaard in there now as well, but they're going to be the basis of the team we're going to build around for years to come, in my opinion. He's a very, very important player. He's just been troubled by a niggling injury, hasn't he, recently, Smith Rowe? But he's still one of our most important players in my book. But the way he played against Tottenham last time, literally ripping them to shreds.
it was awesome.
It was so good. I mean, he has been my favourite player for a long, long time, Smith Rowe, coming through the ranks. Again, everyone that watches this knows that. I love watching him play more than most. And I would love to see him start, actually, on Thursday. It'd be very, very harsh on Martinelli, because he was in wonderful form against Leeds. But I just think he'll be more effective against the Tottenham defence, personally.
I do too. He can play in tight areas a little bit better.
Yeah.
As great as Martinelli is at his pace is so great. Smith Rowe has that where he can receive and turn, and that first step, his acceleration. I mean, I know it's like not talked about very much because he's such a technically skilled player, but his acceleration and first step, it has to be the fastest on our team. It has to be. I mean, it's ridiculous. That first burst. I mean, that's how he has assisted and scored so many goals this season, is just on the counter. He's just such a menace. Yeah,
definitely. That's the thing I love most about him, is that when the way he receives a ball and turns and he's gone immediately. First thought, he's like a road runner, head down, run towards the goal, and cause havoc. And that, like you said, that burst of pace is just something else to watch. Absolutely love it. So fingers crossed we'll get to see him rip Tottenham to shreds on Thursday. But I think we will leave it there. But before we go, please give everyone another chance to find your podcast and tell them a bit about it, Will, and tell them where they can find you. Because I've said it about 4 or 5 times in recent shows, so I've been giving you a good plug. But tell them about it, because I'd love more people to get to know about you.
For sure. The podcast is called Away from Hale End, and basically once a week, I just recap all the performances from our academy players on loan. So I'm not going as far as you're talking about Bellerin or Saliba or Mavropanos, as much as they're great players. It's really just a focus on the academy players, and when they're on loan at other clubs. And then during international breaks, I try and follow them. Many of them called up to their youth international teams, and it's once a week, comes out on Thursday mornings. It's called Away from Hale End. You can find me on Twitter, Hale End Productions, at Balogunner14, and I'm really been enjoying it. I've always found the academy system to be so interesting. At Arsenal, we've had so many amazing technicians come through, and not all succeed at Arsenal, but find success at other places, and it's been a blast to do. So give me a listen and hit me up on Twitter with any questions. Happy to answer them, and I appreciate Andrew all the plugs and having me on here. It's been a blast.
Fantastic. You're more than welcome. And I do apologise. There's one other thing I just really want to quickly squeeze in, if I may, before we go with you. And that is Daniel Ballard, actually, because because there have been murmurings in the press that Rob Holding, as much as I would desperately love him to stay, is looking for a sort of more regular first-team football, which you can understand. But I would love him to stay. I don't think it's a better third or fourth choice centre-back in the league, in my opinion, than him. But if he does move on, because Ballard is a very, very similar style of player to Rob Holding, isn't he? And he's been doing brilliantly for Millwall. His stats have been outstanding, haven't they? As you mentioned on your podcast. I mean, would he be an option, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting with defense because it's hard to trust somebody who hasn't played, Premier League football, but he has been Millwall's best player all season. I mean, in the 6 or 8 weeks that he missed due to injury, I mean, Millwall basically didn't win a match and their defensive record was horrible. He's filled in they play a 5 at the back. He's filled in at a right center back position, and he's done what he's done at every previous loan, which has just been an absolute duel demon. That's what I like to call him. He wins nearly every aerial duel. He's excellent at keeping play in front of him. He's only been dribbled past 3 or 4 times this season. And for a young player, that's so rare because often positionally, that's the hardest thing for defenders to really adjust to, is especially when he's played mostly in a back 4 in his career, but he's filled in excellently. And yeah, I mean, I understand Rob Holding. He's been great. Everyone loves when he comes in to secure a lead and 5 at the back. And, he's a no-nonsense defender. But Daniel Ballard, if he's ever going to get a chance at Arsenal, that's what he's going to do to break into the first team. He's a no-nonsense defender. He wins duels. He clears the ball. He's not the best distributor, although he has improved quite a bit this season. Gotten his passing up to in the mid-70% range, which is, you'd like it to be a little bit higher. You like him to get into that 78 to 80% range. But, yeah, I mean, he can do that Rob Holding job. I think he can come in and do it pretty immediately. But again, it so much depends on if Rob Holding is staying. This is as high as Daniel Ballard's value probably will get. He's not going to come in next year and play 30 matches. That's highly unlikely. And he did that this season for Millwall. He started 31 matches for them, helping them keep 7 clean sheets. 9th place finish for Millwall is not bad. So, yes, I think if Rob Holding was to move on, and I could see why he would want to do that, Daniel Ballard could fill that 4th, 5th center back role. But, there's always a possibility that he moves on this summer because, the academy is not just about producing players to step into Arsenal. It's also about producing a profit for the club.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we'll see.
But the thing is that interests me, though, is that because we've got so much to do this summer for the first team, to buy, the actual first team starters and to bulk up the squad so much, we can't go and buy them all. It's good.
Yeah.
As much as we'd love to, we can't go out and buy 10 players. This is what I mean. When you've got fringe players who aren't playing that many minutes anyway, it's absolutely ideal to bring in the academy players that are good enough, if you have to call on them, to give them a chance.
Look at Chalobah for Chelsea this year. Him and Malang Sarr, they filled in when they've needed to. I mean, Sarr is a little bit more questionable, but coming into the season, I don't think a lot of people thought Chalobah was going to play such a role for Chelsea, and he has. He stepped in and done what he had to do. And Daniel Ballard, again, he's a no-nonsense defender, so he's the exact kind of player who can probably transition to the first team pretty seamlessly, as long as he's not asked to do too much. And I don't think Arteta would ask him to do any more than that.
This is what I mean, because he's a very, very similar type of player to Rob Holding in the respect that he's a very good, solid defender, good old-fashioned type of defender, great in the air, good in the tackle, good in the standing tackle, defends the penalty box brilliantly. Not like you said, not brilliant as like a Ben White in distribution, but neither is Rob Holding. This is what I mean to say. It's because they're so similar. I just thought it might be an idea if he does move on.
There's another player that we have not mentioned, Rekic. He's on the focus, and in fact, he was one of the highlights at the AFCON.
Yeah, he has represented Tunisia at a senior level quite a bit. I think Rekic actually definitely has a future at Arsenal. I think he will need to go on loan. He hasn't done that yet. I don't think he's quite ready to step in, but. Yeah, I mean, if Ballard and Holding were both to go, I don't think you could send Rekic on loan. I think he would be your next option to step in. And I will just say for next season, somebody to watch who will probably play a lot of U23 football is Zach Awe. He is an incredibly, incredibly interesting prospect. He reminds me quite a bit of Saliba. He's a very tall defender. He stands straight up, but he's very comfortable with the ball at his feet. He can dribble by somebody. He can make it. He's an excellent distributor. I'm excited to see him get a lot of action with the U23s next year. He really is an interesting prospect, both physically and with his technical skill.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time where we were not producing any kind of defensive talent.
None.
And we are now, which is great. I mean, I know we brought some of them in, like Rekic, obviously we brought in, but and Dinze and players like that. But Brooke Norton Cuffy could be the best defensive talent we've got out of the Hale End since Ashley Cole.
Seriously. And not to mention Ryan Alabiosu is also
Yeah.
an incredible talent
Yeah.
at right back. I mean, he'd be who we're talking about if it wasn't for having Brooke Norton Cuffy. He's also a serious talent. I mean, there just isn't going to be enough room for all these guys. I mean, look at Chelsea. They had Livermento. They just didn't have a place for him and had to let him go. I mean, this is just what happens when you have a great academy. It's a good problem to have. So
Tarek Lamptey as well.
Yeah,
Tarek
exactly.
Lamptey.
They had Lamptey, Livermento, and Reiss James. There was never going to be a place for all of them. And I mean, I can name 3 more right back prospects we have at Hale End who might also have huge futures. So it's exactly as you said. We used to not really produce any defensive prospects, but there are 5 or 6 right now for real who probably will be Premier League players.
And there's the guy left back whose name is completely escaping me. Yeah, we've got. He looks very, very good as well. He got him from West Bromwich, didn't we? West Bromwich.
Yeah, he's 16 years old, and I mean, if he was 18, we'd be talking about him coming up to the first team next year. He is a serious prospect. Although we couldn't watch it, he played in that behind closed doors friendly with the first team, and people were very impressed. So I think next year he'll probably go on loan just because there isn't room for him. But anything's possible. He seems like a serious player.
He might be in the under 23s and the 16. That's how good
he has been playing with the under 23s.
Yeah, but I mean, next season he could have a full season with them
for sure. And Betsy's really got something serious going there. So they might end up keeping him with the U23s, and he makes that step right to the senior team as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, may well do. But we'll leave it there. I've kept you for far longer than we spoke about, but it's been a wonderful episode to talk to you through all that information. It's been brilliant. So hopefully you maybe come on again in the future as well.
Would love
to. Great to see you again, Kunjan, as well.
Good to catch up with you guys. Will, it was a pleasure. Andrew, thank you for having me.
No problem at all. And thank you to everyone in the chat. Some great chat going on there today with Shane, with Gary, with Stephen, and all the others that have been there today as well. Some lovely Mr. Bungle. Everyone else that's been in the chat. It's been great. Thank you for all of you. Thank you. Give us a like before you leave. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we all look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully with a good result to talk about on Thursday. But until then, I'm going to go and get my sick bucket and